everyone. Um, this is the value of a sponsorship. Joyly is a brand that I made up so that we can put context to different things. If you see that name Joyly, it's just a made up brand that I could use for whatever, it could be a car, it could be a drink, it could be a summit in this case. Um, I am from originally from Chicago, lived in San Luis Potosi, so I'm Potosino by heart, by birth from Chicago, and now I live in San Diego with my family and two of my children. Two more live in Chicago, so I go there quite frequently, and I own on-site. A little bit more perspective on why I can speak about this topic is because I've had the privilege of working with on the agency side with Publicis, my own agency at one point, on the brand side, and on the media side. So with that broad perspective, I've been venturing to do a little bit more of that focus on sponsorships. It's very across the board. So when you see some of these topics, there might be some examples that may not fit completely what you think, but we can go and make them a little bit more um, focused on maybe some of the things that you guys are working on. Um, eh, Onsite Collective is kind of the consultancy of Onsite. So we operate at an intersection of creative tech. So anything and everything that has to do with events and so on. Data analytics, that's probably the bigger focus of the ecosystem that we're building. Obviously, always with a dose of inclusivity, and then marketing strategy, which is kind of a little bit of that blend of what we're going to be talking today when it comes to sponsorship perspectives. Um, your logo here. Promising or expecting your logo placement is just not enough. And I always say this because sometimes whatever the context is, if it's a big property, I mean properties, think of properties when it comes to um, a it could be a summit, it could be a sporting event, it could be a music a festival, whatever. Those are properties, okay, for us in this world. So, promising just your logo and trying to use that revenue to offset your production is just not enough for a sponsor. So, you want to provide more context. And these are some foundations of sponsorship. Metrics and foundational frameworks that could help you and truly provide what the sponsor can expect, but also how you create a more value for your property, whatever that is. And again, put your questions here, and I'll be happy to answer them. So building a strong foundation is the key to create value, or on the side of the sponsor to extract value from that sponsorship, right? So we're gonna go through these. I'm gonna go through them very quickly. I created one pager for each one. These are frameworks that could work, and you can adapt them to your own events or your own properties. But we're gonna talk about alignment, what the potential center of excellence could look like, and I went way too big maybe on this one. I went into the World Cup type of perspective. Also, what is an audit, and on site your objectives, assets, and this is probably one of the big ones that we're going to spend a little bit more time. um, how to use that ip that you buy, the intellectual property, and then how do you report. So let's think about the sponsorship alignment and your levers. I created these because I actually had a tough time at one point with when I was on the brand side, when people will come in and like, can we sponsor X and can we sponsor Y and can we sponsor the Chili Fest and whatever? And I'm like, wait, let's think about these a little bit better. And basically, these levers or these levers and actually could be a checklist that can provide you a for both the sponsor or the property to seek what type of sponsors are more aligned to your property, or what type of property should be more aligned to your brand. So where to activate, right? I mean, as simple as it is this aligned to your key markets? This is important because yes, right now we're in a very in a virtual event, but could potentially, do I have that reach and that reach from my brand in order to be, nationwide? What are my products, right? How do we leverage that official partnership and those rights, whether it's from a tournament, whether it's on a summit, from my booth, wherever that is, if it's B2B or B2C, it's really interchangeably. But what are those products that do align with the property? So think about what else can, if I'm offering a sponsorship of, or if I'm buying a sponsorship, how else can I integrate my products with them? Um, do they offer a process? Are they organized in a way, right? When they come in and they do the intake, when they give us the sponsorship rights, what type of media assets, what type of, and we call them plugged and unplugged, and we're going to go into those details in a little bit. But, what are those assets that I'm going to be having, and what is that worth? Measurement. This is obviously the most important part for me, because I strongly believe this is why I started all these, because I felt that we lacked measurement when it came to events. So when it comes to sponsors, from the moment that you start your sponsorship to the moment that you report your results, that strategy has to be the same. It can evolve and it can do a few other things, but the main focus, the main fundamentals will stay the same. So what kind of reporting is the sponsorship giving, or what kind of are you expecting? The target audience, are they, will your target audience show up? And I want to put a little bit pause here, because you can have, they can tell you we're going to have 100 people coming in, but only 20% of that is your target audience. Is that the right audience? Even if you want to grow or anything else, but if that's not your target audience, you may, fall on deaf ears. um, your unplugged and plugged assets, what are those? The media, versus your on-site assets. And on-site, I mean live events, and we'll talk about, from a banner perspective or anything else, and the resources that are needed. And I always, when I was on the brand side, I would always say, free is not free, because people will come in and say, hey, but this event is free, and all they need is X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, yes, but free is not free, because that will require time from my team, resources that we may not need, that we can potentially use for something or another sponsorship that could potentially really give us a lot more for what we're expecting, right? That would align better to our target audience, to our products, or where we will activate. So think of these as checklists, and use them accordingly. Um, the ideal center of excellence. So I use the World Cup because I worked on a couple of projects, and I felt like, well, I know this is kind of big, but when you think even at a local level, it's still relevant, right? Even at a local level or a regional level, you think of the US and you think of your target, your target markets and so on. What are those work streams? So think of the work streams that you will have, like, communications, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But what are those business units that you're going to be activating, or the products that will be under your brand that you will be activating in that sponsorship? Who are the main people that will help you, move forward on these? And what are those internal teams or external teams that will help you, right? So in this case, many times they use an agency to activate. Well, how are we keeping up with that, and how are we reporting back? So think of those, and this is a really good framework, because as big as it is, you can think regionally, locally, and even globally, right? What are those teams that are going to need full-time help, part-time, or a percentage of them, or creating squads, which we use a lot in the tech world. um, so this is a big one, and I think, think about these from your inventory audit. When you think of your elements that you want to produce to create that value, so this is where the value is. Many people just focus on the media side, right? So what are your social handles? What are your, how many posts are we going to have? How much advertising, media, etc. That is one part of it. But there is all these other pieces of part of the intellectual property that you're creating or that you're buying, that you can potentially um, create more value by truly taking advantage of that, right? From a hospitality standpoint, from a, before the event, after the event, during the event, ticketing, or the rights, and that you can take. So This is really important that you separate both and then see the value that they're giving you in order to then provide that. Also, from a non-media side of it, it is important to also this will create a ton of value if you create other opportunities, and this is where creativity really flows. I'll share some examples of that in a little bit. Now, when it comes to on-site activation, think of these five things, and I usually have them here on my wall, as you can see, probably the same. So people, is that my target audience? And we talked a little bit about that, but the reach is important. That's what when I talked about, 100 people versus the 20, or is it 80% of my audience that truly is my target audience versus only 10, right? So when you think of those, then that will give you a little bit more opportunity to actually then um, reach them. Then frequency. Well, how many times are we going to be talking to these target audience? Are we talking to them more frequently? Are we going to be connecting with them through all the assets? That is the frequency. And when you think of media, it's very similar. Your investment, obviously, that will give you some ROI, and then the time. How many times are we doing this? Are we doing only one summit? Are we doing two summits within the same target audience, and so on? It is important to understand that target audience because then you can look for other properties that could potentially give you that, or as a property, which ones am I competing against, and how can I stand, against them? um, your marketing and business objectives. I mean, it's similar to media, right? You have your awareness, your consideration, your trial, and your actions. The way I'm proposing this is that when you take your primary objectives, think of your awareness events as those that you're going to spend the most money on because they will have a much more broader exposure if you have broadcast rights or some other media perspective, and think of your action events as smaller ones, right? Quick activations that you will be doing. So, for example, right now I'm focusing on sampling events, and on sampling events, it's really two, 300 people, but you do 100 of them, right? Um, think of those moments as those potential primary objectives, and then your assets. And this is where it's important. I know that I may be speaking a little bit more broader, but when you think of your assets in trying to create value for them, a banner may just be an awareness play, and that may not be worth a ton. But when you have your video behind the behind a logo, behind a wall, that or behind a presentation, that could be worth much more because then the total audience will be watching that, right? During a specific 2 hour time or so on. So that will be worth more. So think about those assets as the value can increase. Here are some tactical ideas and creative areas that I loved, and I'm focusing a little bit more on the soccer side because I did this presentation for World Cup. But there were these are two incredible ones, right? One, the for Volkswagen, the official ball delivery. I don't know if you've seen that for the U.S. soccer national team. There is a little car that comes in and delivers the ball, but everyone watches that on TV, and the exposure that that can have is incredible. That asset was probably not worth a whole lot to negotiate, when it came to that, but now I'm sure that it's worth a lot. And on our side, for example, when I was working on World Cup for Coca Cola, it was super cool to work on this idea. Then we took one asset, which was the banners on the electronic banners on the side of the field, and we created the song of Cielito Lindo and put the words in there, the lyrics, and the entire stadium started to sing. That in itself created just that moment of happiness for Coca-Cola that just, blew up. And it was earned media that was not necessarily, part of the sponsorship. Again, how do you extract the value from something that may not be worth a whole lot, but you can create a much bigger play? And again, think of your asset examples as what people are going to see, how they're going to engage, are they going to try it, and how are they going to act. I always one thing here that is really important is that don't think events as media completely because they're not the same. You know, you use media to attract people to the event, and you use media to maybe do more exposure, but they're definitely not the same. So um, always definitely use the funnel, but in different ways. Um, it's more multidimensional, and this is where you take the intellectual property beyond the property. So when you think of a when you purchase a property per se, think of how you're going to take that to a to the event itself, beyond or before the event. Like in this example, you can use it for employee retention, or so I was sitting on another chat right now where they were talking about ERGs. Can you use that sponsorship with your ERGs to potentially get a little bit more engagement, right? Or are they offsite activations where you can say, hey, let's bring this property in internally or externally with consumers at a retail site or something like that. So there's many ways that you can use a sponsorship, and that's the beauty of it beyond media, right? Now, this is a big, framework, but I'm gonna ask you to focus on this and the activation intensity, because there's only three areas. There's the attract portion, which is the media portion that are gonna bring to the event. This is where you're gonna focus on the event itself, the day of the event, and how are you gonna leverage all those pieces, and then what do you want them to do? And it's not just about trial and conversion, and I put it here, but what is that next step that you want them to take? Okay, it is important to have that, but don't. Your objective is going to be, I just want them to know about me, and that's awareness, and that's super cool. Because if you think of media, and I should have put that little site in there, but hopefully you'll get it. So when you think of media, a a an impression on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn, when someone sees your ad, they account that if they see your ad for a 13th of a millisecond. Okay, think of this: it's a quarter of a second, and that counts as an impression. So when you think of an event, we're not talking a 13th of a millisecond. We're thinking minutes. We're thinking hours. We're thinking more than that. So think of that impact that you could have, even if it's a smaller universe, but it may be all your universe, your entire audience. I'd love to close with these. Think of us a little bit more around from an idea perspective, strategy, collab, and tech in order to deliver results. And I've been building tools to, from a strategy perspective, focus a little bit more on several areas of the entire ecosystem of sponsorships, from a sampling, more at a higher level with onsite, and then obviously AI native now, where we can deliver more. But one of the big things is I developed a methodology to actually understand value and how to extract value from your sponsorship with Ment, which is our activation index. With that, thank you so much. I want to leave a few minutes for us to chat. Happy to answer questions. I see some maybe questions here. Um, so, uh, Awesome. So this is it. I can take the presentation out, and if anybody wants to ask questions or jump in, happy to answer them. All right. So during the late tech week, I won't be able to do in person, but I wonder if I can share with the host to give away to the participants. Yes. Happy to do so. Yes, I can. I can share this with you. Um, let's see. Gracie is focused on helping founders with their digital marketing personal brand to connect with funding opportunities. That's super cool. Yes, we can definitely connect. Happy to do so. Any other questions? Happy to answer them. I know it's sometimes it's difficult to kind of grasp, because it's such um, a multidimensional effort when it comes to events, and sometimes trying to look at it only from the lens of media, it can really wreck your brain. So it's tough, but I've been doing this for a while, so it's a lot of fun. At the end of the day, an event is, who could not enjoy that one-on-one perspective with with a brand or with within our community and so on to really connect, right? Even on a virtual setting as we're doing today. Other questions? I know we have 5 minutes and I finished a little early. I can come back and focus on a few of the other things. I wanted to leave it kind of broad. And I know there's some really foundational things, but wanted to give you also some examples of how you can take that. If you guys want to talk a little bit more about summits or booths or things like that, happy to do so too. I think there was someone that it said through one person that was doing ERG, and they talked about vanity metrics versus insights. I think that they're both related. Without the number of people that are coming to the event, without knowing with rigor how many people are coming in and what your target audience is, any of the rest of the true metrics that you want to provide will not be there. So you always want to have the foundational ones. What examples you've seen of people sharing? Tell me more. If you don't mind. Sorry I put you on the spot, Gracie. If it's examples of yeah, when people share, I guess, from a sponsorship. Oh, Q&A. Sorry. How can you reach out for a sponsorship initially? I would say that if you want to, that's probably the biggest thing, and that was part of the beginning, right? Sometimes we wanna think of sponsorship as a line of revenue, and it should be a line of revenue, but you have to first start with what you have to offer, who your target audience is, and what kind of assets you're going to give, right? If without those two, then if you already have those, then yes, you can reach out and then do um, uh, then you can do a one pager, with those four things. Here's my target audience. Here's how many people we reach. Here are your target. Here's the consistency of the event, and then you can provide a little bit more on the different packages. I usually try to make sure that there is a blend of what you offer when it comes to some logo placement, but also what are those moments of truly true engagement that you want to have um, uh, with the target audience and with the brand that is supporting you. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Um, as a sponsor, I wanted to connect with other founders, introduce my marketing service to them, wanted to give them a resource. I think that as a single sponsor of a marketing, eh, definitely it's important to see, yeah, do this, try to give presentations around what you're good at and so on, and that could potentially give you more space. Usually when you become sponsor, that you have to pay to play in a way. So I would say that would be one of the areas, but think about where you want to be, and then where you want to spend your money. And sometimes in summits, a booth, to me, I think, unless you really want to get creative, a booth would be tough to engage with people. And the other session with the keynote speaker is about to start, so we only have a minute. You guys can connect with me. I have my information in my bio, and I will be more than happy to connect one on one to also provide a little bit more perspective. Okay. Thank you for those that attended. I really appreciate it. Have a great rest of the summit, and I hope to see you again. Okay. Ciao.